Hello, my name is Riley Evans, and this is my oral EIS report on Professor Nancy B. Grimm's Envisioning Positive Futures and Nature-Based Solutions for the Anthropocene. Professor Grimm asks two main questions at the beginning of her lecture. The first being, can nature-based solutions build resilience to floods, extreme heat, and other extreme events? The second is, do people incorporate nature in these future visions? The third and fourth questions are ones that I interpreted and inferred, piggybacking off of her main questions she asks and based off of her continued dialogue throughout the lecture. Keep these in mind as we proceed. Professor Grimm's teams began by identifying communities in both North and South America at the highest disadvantage when it comes to natural disasters. These communities were usually underserved or poorer communities. So, they created a series of workshops to engage the community. The first workshop's objective was to discover residents' concerns and wants for the community. The second workshop's objective was to introduce designers and government officials to determine realistic actions. And the third and final workshop was to solidify priority implementations to the solutions. Working with community-based organizations that had previously established deep connections to the residents was key to the success of these workshops. By partnering with the community members, planners could ensure these plans were well-rounded and addressing the primary concerns of the residents. Some real ideas generated from the workshops, real-life examples, were maintenance and insertion of large shade trees, shaded bus stops, and accessible water fountains. Now we're going to talk specifically about one of the communities that Professor Grimm's team worked with. This took place in South Mountain Lake Village in Arizona. Um, Historically, this is a marginalized community that is within a valley landscape, uh, kind of nudged between two mountains. They are pretty secluded from any major city, so they're pretty self-reliable and sustainable. In the first workshop, they analyzed future climate expectations like extreme heat. As we all know, Arizona has a desert landscape, so extreme heat was definitely the major focus when it came to this case study. In the second workshop, they identified and detailed goals and mapped out strategies. So they essentially had maps in front of them and they pinpointed certain areas within the village where this was needed most. They can make sure they were targeting the proper areas. In the third and final workshop, they created a realistic and tangible illustration of the implementations called future visions. So the future visions were the point of them is to, by the end of the workshops, they were able to have a presentation that the people could bring to city council members or those who could fund these future visions. So the focuses of the future vision for the South Mountain Lake Village residents were urban cooling, so tree canopies and public green spaces. The second being local food production. Like I said, they are kind of separated from any major cities, so they're pretty self-sufficient when it comes to food, and food scarcity is a huge issue for communities like this during natural disasters, so they wanted to implement community gardens and vertical farming to avoid that. Um, the last and final focus was avoiding gentrification. A lot of the time when you introduce green infrastructure to lower income areas like this, gentrification seems to follow not too far behind. So they wanted to ensure that affordable housing and rent control policies were in place to protect pre-established residents. Once the future vision of South Mountain Village was finalized, community members were coached on how to speak to city councils and other governing powers to get their vision realized. So the results and conclusion of the South Mountain Village Future Vision resulted in the Emerald City Project, which encapsulates the solutions that can be put in place now. The project includes green infrastructure like green roofs and public green spaces, tree canopies, and the integration of foliage that support floodwater absorption. So, Professor Grimm's team's methods proved to be successful. Many projects, like the Emerald City in Arizona, are being put into action as we speak. By bridging the disconnect of communities, government, scientists, and planners, Grimm's team was able to form successful and sustainable city plans that solve infrastructural issues in disadvantaged communities during natural disasters by using nature-based solutions. Many visions were presented for each city, including multiple for the South Mountain Village people alone. So Grimm's team created a qualitative assessment that would compare and contrast the projects based on their equity, sustainability, and resilience. This assessment ensured the best vision was being put into action. My reaction. Did I have any questions? I was hoping to find out how much funding was being granted to these projects since it's extremely difficult to get funding for projects like this depending on the state you're in. I'll definitely have to follow up on that. The second question was, how did the research connect to my classes? Well, as an environmental studies major with a minor in urban planning, this lecture connected directly to my courses. My urban development, bioenvironmental sciences, and even this ecology class all discuss nature-based solutions to urban issues on social, infrastructural, behavioral, and scientific levels. The last question was, how did the research connect to my daily life? As a born and bred Houstonian, extreme heat and flooding infrastructure and management is deeply personal to me and my everyday life. Learning about projects like the Emerald City gives me hope that initiatives can be taken in my own city to combat infrastructural issues like the urban island heat effect and major flood zones. This is my references, aka Professor Nancy Grimm's Planetary Talk, and thank you for listening.